Hey friends, Elizabeth here from Plant-Based Bride, back again with another video, and today I'm setting up my bullet journal with a Betta Fish theme for June. Today's video is kindly sponsored by Skillshare. I'll talk about them at the end of the video, but for now, let's hop into getting this set up done. So this is actually the final month I'm going to be able to fit in my current bullet journal. I'll be setting up a brand new bullet journal for the second half of the year for July. So because this is the final setup in this bullet journal, I had a couple fewer pages than I actually needed for this setup. So you'll see a little later in this video that I modified my weekly spread for the final 2 weeks of June so that I could fit every spread into this bullet journal, and I used right up to the very final page that white end paper that's in every notebook, and I actually took an extra piece of note paper from one of my art journal of notepads and glued it onto that final end paper because I needed that final page. So I'm really cutting it close in this bullet journal. I used every possible page available. When I was thinking about what theme I wanted to do for June, I had a couple different ideas, but I kept coming back to wanting to do some sort of an underwater or fish-related theme. And as I started to narrow in on that more, I kept thinking about these two Betta fish that I had as a kid, and I thought I would create a theme inspired by them because I was quite devastated when they passed. So for this setup, I'm going to start by doing all of the inking on all of my spreads, using my Secura Micron pen to do all of those lines, and then once all of that is dry, I'm going to go back in and add color. Starting with the cover page on the left, I just wanted to create some artwork inspired by my two Betta fish staring at each other intensely through the glass of their aquarium. So that is kind of what this artwork on the left is meant to represent, although I tried to give more of a loving vibe than the actual vibe that they had, which was much more aggressive in reality. I'm also cutting out the tabs for my weeklies at this point. I am using my Faux Dutch Door rolling weekly as I always do for the first 3 weeks of June, and then for the final 2 weeks of June, I'm doing a 2-page weekly spread, as I said, because I did not have enough pages. So you'll see my solution to that later on in the video. I wanted to share some quick facts about Betta fish with you all. The first fact is that Betta is in fact pronounced Betta. I always thought they were beta fish, but I was incorrect. Betta fish are native to Asia, where they live in the shallow water of marshes, ponds, and slow-moving streams. Male bettas are devoted fathers who build bubble nests for their young with their mouths and fiercely protect their babies from predators. Just like humans, betta fish are diurnal, meaning that they're active during the day and sleep at night. The average lifespan for a betta is approximately 2 to 4 years in captivity, although some betta fish have lived as long as 9 years when cared for in ideal conditions. Once I finished cutting out all the tabs, I flipped back to my cover page and my calendar and started working on that calendar spread. So here I wanted to separate my betta fish and have them in the upper and lower corners, sort of encircling my monthly calendar, and around the fish I wanted to have some bubbles and sparkles just to give a bit of a whimsical, magical vibe. Betta fish are extremely territorial and will attack each other quite easily, though there is a phenomenon where female betta fish can live together in what's known as a sorority with 4 to 5 or more females relatively peacefully. Bettas in general are very independent and don't travel in schools. Bettas are primarily carnivores, feeding on insects on the surface of the water in the wild. Betta fish have very tiny, sharp teeth. Unfortunately, betta fish are often mistreated both through breeding farms and pet shops, but also through fighting competitions, which are completely unethical. For the header on my calendar page, I'm using a bit more of an intricate font. The font that I'm creating is heavily inspired by the font Mint Soda, which I found online, and I did my best to recreate that font using my ruler and my circle template. There are over 70 different species of betta fish. Betta fish have a variety of tail shapes, including veil tail, crown tail, delta tail, half moon, double tail, comb tail, rose tail, spade, and more. This is partially why I tried to create different looking tails for the different betta fish that I drew throughout this setup. Betta fish tend to be very colorful, and the colors indicate their health. Generally, the brighter and richer their color, the healthier they are. If you have a favorite type of fish, let me know what it is in the comments, and if you enjoyed the betta facts, make sure to leave a fish emoji down there in the comment section. For the calendar itself, I'm keeping it very simple, just some horizontal lines to indicate the weeks, minimalist and practical. Flipping the page to the first weekly here, I decided to add a little more detail into my weeklies this time around. I started that trend last month, and y'all seemed to enjoy seeing weeklies with a little more design going on, so I thought I'd challenge myself to try something a little different this month. I created rectangles to outline each day of the week, whereas usually I keep things pretty open and plain, and added some bubbles and sparkles all around. I also used this font inspired by mint soda, again, just for a little more visual impact. If you're unfamiliar with a rolling weekly, I'll link my video where I go into great detail explaining how to set it up and how I use it, so you can check that out. Once I finished with my weeklies, I flipped to the final spread of this setup, where I wanted to have a quote page on the left and a final piece of art on the right. And for my quote this month, I decided to go with, "And like the waves, I will fall, I will rise," using that same mint soda inspired font. Moving on to the final page of this setup, which is going to be, as I said, a little art piece. I am drawing a single betta fish on this page, and you might notice that each spread where I've drawn these fish, I've tried to give them a little bit of variation in how they look, because betta fish can vary so much in their appearance, especially in the huge number of color variations they can have. But I really wanted on this final piece of art for the betta fish's tail to really have a lot of movement, like it's flowing through the water. While betta fish can come in so many different color combinations, I decided to do my usual thing, which is sticking to a very narrow color scheme so that everything feels cohesive. My initial plan was to paint these betta fish in the original colors of the fish that I had in real life. One was mostly red with some purple, and the other was blue. But because this is a June setup and I'm often drawn in the summertime to warmer tones, peaches and oranges and yellows, I really wanted to stick in that family. So I decided to use a single color of Winsor & Newton gouache, raw sienna, as a base, and mix it with different amounts of zinc white to create different tones of orange and peach, and to really stick to that single color so that everything felt, as I said, very cohesive. You could of course do this with any color, because betta fish really do come in pretty much every color. You could do green, blue, purple, pink, red. There are so many options. I also decided to fill in the lettering. As per usual, I'm painting the tabs on my weeklies, and this time I'm painting them in a nice soft gradient from a very, very light peach all the way through to the pure raw sienna, and for my final tab, I'm mixing the raw sienna with a little bit of brown to get an even darker shade. can see a preview of my solution for the 2-page weekly spreads, trying something very outside of my usual comfort zone, but sticking, of course, still with a rolling weekly with my weekly task list. I couldn't function without it, so it has to stay no matter what. Before I show you the final flip through, I want to take a quick second to talk to you about today's video's sponsor, Skillshare. As you'll know, I have been a big fan of Skillshare for many years, and I use them all of the time to learn a wide variety of creative skills. As I'm sure you know, Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for anyone who loves learning and wants to explore their creativity. From photography and illustration to graphic design, productivity, and more, you can find classes that will match your goals and interests no matter what they are. Skillshare's platform is now available in French, Spanish, Portuguese, and German, so you can enjoy Skillshare in your language of choice. Skillshare is ad-free, so you can stay in the zone while you're exploring new skills. New premium classes are launched each week, so there's always something new to discover. Most recently, I took the Interior Design, Create a Plan for Your Perfect Room class by Arlen Hernandez. I've been dreaming about designing my perfect space since we moved about a year ago, and I've been feeling pretty overwhelmed by the prospect. I love so many different types of decor, so many different textures and shapes and color palettes that I found myself getting stuck on the gathering inspiration phase and not wanting to move forward with anything more concrete. I love that this class focuses on that core moment of transferring your inspiration into a solid plan that allows you to move forward. This class was exactly what I needed and has made me so excited to design my space. I highly recommend it. Because Skillshare is sponsoring this video, the first 1,000 people to use the link in my description or my code plantbasedbride will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and now let's look at that final flip through of my June setup. I'm really happy with how my June setup looks now that I'm all finished. I'm especially a big fan of how my weeklies turned out, though I will admit they took me quite a bit longer than usual to finish, so I might not be able to do this level of intricacy in my weekly designs every single month, but I'm super excited to start using them, and this is just a general tip. I know a lot of us have been struggling with burnout in different areas of our lives, especially creative areas, in the last couple years. And one of the biggest things that's helping me not get burnt out on my bullet journal specifically is trying different things, shifting things, experimenting, and challenging myself so that I don't get stuck in a rut of doing exactly the same thing over and over again. That's not to say you have to completely throw out what works for you and do something completely new. You can see that I tend to stick with very similar layouts. I always use my rolling weekly spreads, but even using your tried and true spreads, there are things you can do to make things exciting and different. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing my final setup in this current bullet journal. I'll have to do a flip through soon with all of my finished spreads, and keep an eye out for my new setup in my next bullet journal for the second half of 2022. Thank you as always to my patrons for your support. If you at home want to join the squad and get some printables of this month's setup, feel free. There's a link in the card and in the description box down below. And with that, I'm gonna get going. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you really soon in my next one. Bye, friends.